Before this talk starts, I'd just like to go through some housekeeping matters. So everyone will be muted during the presentation while the presenter is speaking. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat box, and they will be addressed after the presentation during the Q&A session. And you can also have a chance to ask verbally if you would like. And this presentation will be recorded and the slides will be made available to you after the session. So don't worry, you can always review them after. Okay, so I will now introduce our speaker, Ms. Gohar Tadavojan. She's the Senior Social Development Specialist at the Asian Development Bank, and she has about 20 years of practical experience in the social development field. At the Asian Development Bank, her role is to ensure that the urban and social sector projects in the East Asia Department are socially inclusive, human-centered, and sustainable. And prior to joining the Asian Development Bank, she worked as an associate professor at the Department of Sociology, Yerevan State University, during which she also held numerous consultancy engagements with major international development agencies and NGOs. Let's now welcome Dr. Gohar Tadavojan, who will be speaking to us on the topic of reframing and adapting social research and analysis in a time of COVID-19.
Thank you very much. Sorry, can I continue?
Yes, let me share the screen. Okay. Wait, let me just share the screen and share. Can you end this? End
yeah, I think we have to
share
end this.
the new before I share the new one. Okay.
Okay, maybe I can say a couple of words before I turn my video off. So thank you very much, Suchin. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this e-learning events organized by NUS Library. Unfortunately, I'm experiencing some technical issues and I have to turn off my video just to make sure that, you know, my audio, that the quality of the audio would be good enough. So I will ask maybe Suchin to share my presentation.
Yes.
And then maybe we can start. Okay, let me stop the video now so that, you know, I have a better quality of internet connection. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So thanks, everyone. I really appreciate everybody being here today for this workshop. I guess the reason that I'm conducting this workshop is that recently I published an article in ADB, and the title of the article was Social Analysis While Social Distancing. And it attracted the attention of NUS Library, and I got an invitation to conduct this workshop. So I'm here today, although virtually, not physically, to share my knowledge and experience with you in this field, and why not also to learn from you. I'm also interested in this workshop because, as Suchin introduced, I had been teaching at Yerevan State University for more than 15 years. And this is a good chance for me to communicate with Singapore academic community, including students, researchers, and staff. Sorry, can you hear me well? I just wanted to check if the quality of the audio is good.
Very well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Let me continue. So I'm a senior social development specialist in ADB, and as presented, my task is to ensure that our project design are inclusive, human-centered, and sustainable. And to do so, we need to conduct a very good social analysis and social assessments in order to translate the key findings into the inclusive design features. As a development institution, we widely use data to inform our decision-making for our member countries' portfolios and projects identification, as well as project design, implementation, and completion. So the primary data collection have a substantial implication on our development programming. Therefore, in the last few months, all the development, the development communities and the researchers, the research companies and think tanks have been struggling with interrupted social due diligences, social analysis and impact assessments for ongoing projects, but most importantly for the new projects. I'm sure that the academic communities, including students, have been also suffering from this situation, because I know that you are also conducting some, field research and collecting some primary data for your papers. So that's why I understand that, I understand also the difficulties that you may experience during this, these pandemic times. And I'm sure that we all have been thinking also, should we postpone data collection or maybe employ different data collection methods? But the problem is that we cannot keep postponing our projects. I mean, you cannot keep, for example, postponing your, papers, academic papers. But I mean, the situation in the world is quite fluid, and now we're experiencing the second wave of this COVID-19, and the contexts are constantly being changed and disrupted, and unfortunately nobody knows how long this situation will last and what the post-COVID situation will look like. So, for the regular surveys that measures, for example, short-term socioeconomic variables that are considered vital for the decision-making, for the, public policies, for any kind of policy decisions, the postponement of survey operations may not be a good option. However, for the large-scale surveys, such as, for example, a census, I think it makes sense to postpone the survey, because these kind of large-scale surveys are not being done annually on annual basis. That's why the objective for the researchers or whoever conducts this, large-scale surveys, maybe the governments, is to ensure the full coverage of population concerned and high quality of data. So we all realize that, business as usual model is no longer appropriate in a time of COVID. And we've been exploring more suitable and safe modes and methods of organizing our operations, of course, without compromising quality of data as much as we can. So today we will discuss the challenges posed by COVID-19 for the data collection, and we'll discuss also the ways how to continue quality data collection and analysis to inform the development project's design and implementation. And in your case, maybe this would be very important to, understand or to learn how you can continue your academic, research work without compromising the quality of the primary data. So before I start my presentation, I just want to mention also that recently I read a blog prepared by my colleagues from ADB Independent Evaluation Department about importance of monitoring and evaluation in ADB project cycle, and it could be relevant to any development project cycle. And I liked very much the way that they explain the importance of monitoring and evaluation in a project. They said that designing and implementing development projects without a strong monitoring and evaluation system is like sending a rocket to Mars with no ground control, no tracking system, and no cameras to record the successful landing. I think it's a very good comparison, and I would like to develop this idea further and say that without conducting a good social analysis and collecting quality primary data to inform the development operations or the development project designs, including setting up a baseline for the robust monitoring and evaluation, we hardly can reach Mars and most probably will get lost somewhere between Earth and Mars. So for us, for social development specialists, the social analysis is a starting point to inform the design of our projects and policies to make it evidence-based, relevant, inclusive, and impactful. So let's go to the, let's start the presentation. Yes, let's start from the outline of presentation. So we'll be looking firstly at ADB's operational cycle to discuss the role of the social due diligence and social analysis in ADB operational cycle. Then we'll outline the conventional research approaches and methods applied during our normal pre-COVID operation. Afterwards, we'll focus on the remote data collection, online data collection methods and tools, and we'll discuss the methodological challenges and advantages. I will also briefly present the pilot project implemented in one of our projects, in a frame of one of our projects in the PRC in China. And I'll conclude my presentation with some final thoughts on the perspectives of the post-COVID social analysis and data collection. Okay, let's get started. Yeah, the first slide is about ADB's, Asian Development Bank. So it's very like, it's a brief information about Asian Development Bank. So it's a multilateral development institution committed to achieving a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and Pacific. It was established in 1966 and it's owned by 68 members, of which 49 countries are from the region. And it assists its member countries and partners to promote sustainable and social, environmental, and economic development through provision of loans, technical assistance, grants, and equity investments. Next slide, please. So this slide demonstrates the ADB's operational cycle. Sorry that the letters, I squeezed the project cycle. It's not a project, it's ADB's operational cycle in one slide so that you can see different stages of ADB's operation. So we have four main stages. First one is the country programming, which leads project concept design, then project design, and the last stage is a project implementation. And the social analysis is an integral part of ADB's operations. Social surveys and analysis and assessments are carried out from project conceptualization to project completion stage. And broadly speaking, the role of this analysis is to make sure that the needs and concerns of the people in need, especially those who are most vulnerable, are addressed by the project's inclusive design. And the idea of this social analysis is to come up with inclusive design features which would allow to maximize the social benefits for beneficiaries, especially for vulnerable people, and avoid or minimize the social risks. So from that perspective, a solid data collection and analysis are critical to a success of any development projects. So if we look at this slide, we'll see that the entry point for the social analysis is the country programming and a country partnership strategy preparation. At the beginning, we start conducting all kinds of sector assessments, including including poverty and social and gender analysis. And at this stage, we have to ensure that the pipeline of the projects supports the inclusive development outcomes for the country. So at this stage, we identify also the projects that have to be carried out at the later stage. So the next stage is a project concept stage. It's already a stage where we work on specific projects and at the project level. And at this stage, we conduct a preliminary so-called initial poverty and social analysis, and we collect information about beneficiaries, about the risk, potential risks and impacts of the projects, including positive and negative impacts, and also identify areas for the further and more deep analysis at the project design stage. The project design stage is more, we conduct more comprehensive poverty and social analysis, including gender analysis, ethnic minority analysis, and we develop different kind of action plans, social development, gender, participation, communication, in order to minimize the adverse impacts on beneficiaries and maximize the benefits, as I mentioned before, or for the beneficiaries, especially for the vulnerable groups. The last stage is a project implementation stage, which also include the project completion and evaluation, appraisal stage. So at this stage, we conduct a regular monitoring, supervision and monitoring activities through data collection, and the last stage is preparation of the project completion, which requires a complete assessment of the project against the preset targets and indicators in the relevant documents of the project. So the question now is how to continue conducting all this, social analysis, assessment, due diligences as part of ADB operation cycle without compromising the quality of data, and at the same time compiling with public health measures and requirements. Because as we can see already, high quality data collection plays an important role in shaping the design of the projects. Could you please go to the next slide, please? So conventional way of conducting our due diligences and impact assessment is based on traditional quantitative, qualitative, and participatory research methods. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with, these research approaches and also methods. And you also apply these methods in your, daily activities, in your academic activities. So the question is, how can we think about the fieldwork now during this pandemic, when we, as a researchers, as well as the respondents, are cut off physically, distance, and under lockdown. Of course, in many cases, we've already moved from in-person to a remote data collection. And depending on the sector and availability of information on beneficiaries, including contacts, we may choose different, online methods. In one case, we rely on interviewing methods. In the other case, we rely on the self-administered questionnaires. We also try to use some participatory research, tools, which is a bit difficult to, use when you are working online. However, it's still possible. What I'm thinking, it's more difficult. Let's speak from the other side. It's more easier to conduct these online surveys in the social sector in terms of designing, for example, a representative sample, or using probability sampling methods for designing representative methods, which will allow us later to generalize the findings, because in many cases in the social sector, we have existing databases, complete databases of the beneficiaries. Unfortunately, we don't have a similar advantage when we conduct online surveys in urban settings with huge number of beneficiaries. So this is a kind of challenge that we are experiencing now. For example, I'm experiencing in my everyday work in China. Could you please go to the next slide? So, and on this slide, I presented the a comparative analysis of quantitative and survey and qualitative researches. Again, you know, I'm sure that you know all these things very well. Just to understand better what can we conduct online, what kind of challenges we could expect when we apply different types of research approaches and tools, I wanted to discuss a little bit the differences to show the potential difficulties or challenges that we could face during online application of these methods. So if we speak about the purpose of or objective of these two research approaches, so the purpose of the quantitative is to explain and predict, to test, confirm, and validate a theory. And the objective of the qualitative research is to understand situations in their uniqueness as part of their particular context, social context, and explore and interpret the situation, but not explain. In a quantitative survey, we rely on standardized procedures and data collection methods. In qualitative researches, the procedure is more flexible, it's not standard, and we can adapt it to a certain social context or situation. The instrument in the quantitative survey is the questionnaire, and in the qualitative research is the researcher itself. Like it could be an interviewer as a primary instrument for data collection, because we don't have a standardized procedure and we don't have a preset indicators, and that's why in this case the researcher is acting as an instrument. The quantitative survey is kind of objective and context-free, and qualitative one is a subjective and context bound. In the quantitative survey, we rely on a deductive approach, moving from general to specific, from theory to the field. And in qualitative researches, we apply inductive approach, going from the field to the theory, from specific to general, allowing to build or to design a theory. In the quantitative survey, we apply probability-based sampling. That's why we have statistically representative sample, allowing quite strong generalization of the findings. In qualitative research, we usually apply non-probability-based sampling or theoretical sampling. Because, as I said, the objective is not to explain the regularities, but to understand the situation and to interpret the situation from people's perspectives. So let's go to the next slide, please. Yeah, before discussing the conventional research methods, I also want to briefly discuss the differences between the conventional researches versus participatory researches, because I mentioned that we're using also participatory research approaches. So the main difference between these two research approaches is that conventional research approach usually is conducted by outside experts, and it measures performance against preset indicators, and it also relies on standardized procedures and tools. In participatory research approach, for us, the most important things is the capacity or are the capacity and capability of the stakeholders and beneficiaries. And we're putting these research capabilities in the hand of stakeholders and beneficiaries so that, they can conduct the research, come up with some solutions to transform their lives. So the objective of this approach is not just to conduct the research in order to collect some data, but to build the capacity of people and their problem-solving capacity to improve their life. That's why the local knowledge is very important in this survey. And we treat respondents in this surveys not as a passive source of information, but as active subjects who participate in the design of the research, in the implementation, in the analysis of the findings, and also translating the findings into the actions. So on these slides, we see the traditional data collection methods, quantitative and qualitative methods that we usually apply in our everyday operation. This is a pre-COVID situation. Again, I'm sure that you know these methods very well. So as part of the quantitative research methods, we apply face-to-face interviewing, questionnaire survey, or self-administered questionnaire survey. We also conduct experimental design, mainly for evaluation and impact assessment purposes. We use secondary data analysis and desk reviews. And as part of the qualitative research methods, we use in-depth interviews, key informant interviews, focus group and community interviews, and desk review. We are not using very much the observation method. I mean, in some projects, yes, we can use, but not a standardized one, more of a qualitative type of observation. So as far as PR or participatory research methods or tools are concerned, we are also using community scorecards, seasonal calendars, citizens report cards, so different participatory research techniques combined with quantitative and qualitative data collection methods. Next slide, please. So this part was about conventional research approaches and methods that we've been using before the COVID hits, us. And of course, we also use some online surveys, but conventional research methods, of course, prevailed in our operation, this face-to-face interactions, I mean. So when COVID hits, it of course forced us to revisit and rethink and articulate the forms of knowledge production. Excuse me, can you hear me well? I just want to check.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, good. So one thing that I guess this pandemic took away from us is the opportunity to being in the field in person and, seeing the, people's situation or the social context or feeling the situation and communication with people, having communication with people. Therefore, currently, we rely on our consultants and partners, and we see and experience all these things through their eyes and perceptions. In my opinion, the big research companies or think tanks are in a better position, or maybe also universities, while collecting primary data, because they have well-established networks in places which could be easily mobilized for data collection purposes. For example, they can have branches within the country, different regions, or in different countries. That makes quite easy the collection of data. In our case, we work with our consultants and with our counterparts, government, and I think they don't have that resources and capacity. I mean, that big resources and capacity for conducting large-scale online surveys. So the restrictive and protective measures put in place across most countries, in many countries affected by COVID, of course, have an impact on our working methods, because most of traditional methods require direct social interaction, and unfortunately, that's not possible, during these physical distancing, quarantines, and partial or total lockdowns. That's why many research companies and also development, agencies move towards the use of online and other remote tools as a solution. And topic of remote data collection has become very popular among researchers. Of course, this is not a novelty. It's not been, created recently as a result of this, pandemic. These online surveys or, survey methods and tools have been in place for about 30 or 40 years ago. So, and in the recent, in the last decades, they've been quite actively used, especially in market research and in psychological researches. But of course, the importance of these online surveys has been growing since maybe March 2020 due to these COVID-related restrictions. So due to this, again, pandemic-related restrictions, we also have to see how can we collect data, without having all these field trips, without interacting people. And one way of getting information about the issues, about the social issues or socioeconomic issues, is analyzing secondary data and conducting secondary data analysis or desk-based analysis where possible. Also, I think obtaining and analyzing administrative data could also be a substitute for the primary data. However, we have to be aware that, although this is important, this is very important to have this kind of data, but it would not suffice for informed and evidence-based decision making. Also, I have to acknowledge that there might be some discrepancies and inconsistencies in administrative data as well due to the same reasons. Next slide, please. So how we go about collecting the primary data. So the internet and the communication technologies have already been dramatically changing modern social research practices, and we can see it. We saw it before, and we see it also today. And in the future, we could expect further expansion of online data collection, and of course, related challenges. Currently, we are living in a very digitized world, and we have to learn how to operate within this digital ecosystem and how we can benefit from this digital ecosystem. I think one thing that this pandemic has done is, it has brought the technology at the forefront in decision making. Therefore, the role of digital media and digital-based tools have become critical in conducting research during this pandemic. In my blog that I published in ADB, I said that the pandemic is likely to change field research practice for the near future and probably long term, which means that I anticipate that even after this COVID or the post-COVID situation, we'll continue using these online surveys, maybe combined with the conventional ones. So we'll discuss this a little bit later. One thing is clear, it's very clear that conventional methods are no longer appropriate during this social distancing. Therefore, data collection procedures, tools, and protocols have to be adjusted and adapted to the new situation. Next slide, please. As I said, social researches have been conducted online for many years, and there are many examples of using online survey tools or doing content analysis or doing ethnographies using existing online interactions as a research material. Interviews have been conducted by phone or by Skype for a long time. Email has been used for, questionnaire survey. So again, it's not innovation, but as I said, we are trying to understand, what methods is more useful in this situation, or what are the challenges related to application of certain methods and tools, and how we can overcome these challenges. On this slide, I present online interviews methods. It's not a comprehensive presentation of online interviewing methods. It's just a snapshot, the key methods maybe. So I have 4 types of interviewing here, online interviewing. And the first one is a telephone interview, which is more or less, traditional one, when the interviewer asks the questions over the phone and records the answers on the paper or on some devices. Second is a computer-assisted telephone interview. Again, the interviewer asks questions over phone, but records the answers directly on the software. The third one, which is widely used now, I think, is a computer-assisted personal interviewing. So here, the interviewer or the respondent uses electronic devices to, such as tablets, for example, to answer the questions. And the last one is a virtual group interview. And we use, again, different kind of applications and programs to conduct these group interviews, including focus groups. For example, Zoom, Skype, MS Teams. And this is very important because, for example, for conducting a group interviews, it's very important to create or create the group dynamics, because that's the meaning of the focus group discussion, to collect the data through the group dynamics. And for example, Zoom, creates this opportunity or possibility of having this group dynamics and being engaged during the discussion and collect the data through the discussion. So this is a very good and a very good opportunity that we are still able to conduct these group interviews, which are qualitative. Because conducting qualitative interviews or collecting qualitative data virtually it's not easy, and we'll discuss this a little bit further later. Next slide, please. So briefly, let me discuss also the advantages and disadvantages of these digital-based interviews, because I will have a general slide on the advantages and disadvantages of the online surveys. So the advantage of this digital-based interview advantages are the following. First of all, it's time and cost efficient compared to the conventional one. And it provides validation during the interview. That's why the results of these online interviews are more accurate, because you can clarify, you can check the information with your with your respondents during the interview, and you can ask your respondents to provide feedback on the information that you recorded to make sure that your understanding is correct. With this, your information will be more valid and more accurate. And this online interview method also allow to monitor the interview process and to make sure that it, took place. It took place properly, and it also allowed to assess the work of the interviewers in terms of the impact of the interviewers of the interview process itself. It also has some limitations because you have to do a very good preparatory work. For example, designing a sample is not an easy task for online interview, not only online interviewing, but also questionnaire survey. That's why, it requires more time and more efforts and application of different kind of sampling methods and different kind of contacting modes. Next, it requires technological competency of interviewers, how to use, the application, how to use the device, etc. It relies on electricity and data connectivity, the problem that I'm having right now, because without having a stable, internet connection or having electricity, sometimes it's very difficult to conduct these online surveys. And as I mentioned before, some of the research approaches and methods are more relevant for online or remote data collection, and some are not very much. So qualitative data collection and also pilot researches are not very efficient for the online for the online interviewing, because of course you can ask for some clarification, for some follow-up questions, probing, etc. But then the length of the interview will be quite lengthy, and maybe will lose the efficiency. So that's why more standardized approach is maybe preferable for the online interviews. Next slide, please. Before I discussed the questionnaire survey. One thing that we have to decide when we're designing the survey is what methods we have to apply based on the survey objective or the research objective. Are we going to use interview, or are we going to use a questionnaire survey? If it's an interview, then what type of interview is it? Should it be synchronous or asynchronous? Should it be one-to-one or group interview? What kind of software we have to use, or how we have to record, retrieve, and analyze data? So these are the questions that we have to answer before we finalizing the design of our online surveys. And it refers to both to online interviewing and also questionnaire survey. So on this slide, I have types of online questionnaire survey, self-administered questionnaire. First two types are instant message based questionnaire, SMS USSD, when questions are sent by SMS and answers are also sent back by SMS by the respondents. Next is an email survey, and as I mentioned, maybe it's one of the first online research methods, data collection methods in email survey, when we send the survey instruments, in this case the questionnaire, to the respondents via email, and get also their responses also via email. So next is a survey via mobile or QR code. This is something which we use now, quite frequently, when we use the QR code to the respondents so that they can access, using this code, they can access the questionnaire via their mobile phone or through internet on a computer, and respond to the questionnaire. Next one is interactive voice response. Interactive voice server, again, is a type of survey conducted via a telephone call. It's more a combination of interviewing and questionnaire, because it uses pre-recorded voice messages. However, you still have to respond to the questions. You have to fill out the questionnaire. So next one is a computer-assisted web interviews through a questionnaire. Again, data are collected via online surveys through a web interface, and the respondents have to respond to the questions on their own computers, tablets, or smartphones. The last one I included here is a social media survey, when we use different social media platforms to collect data or about different, socioeconomic issues. Next slide, please. So I also, could you please go to the next slide? Yeah, okay. So here I presented the pros and cons of digital-based questionnaire survey, and we can see some similarities with the online interviewing. Again, it has low cost. Also, we save time when we apply this questionnaire, online questionnaire. It could have a very big geographic coverage, and we could reach a big number of people through this self-administered questionnaire. Compared to the interviewing, in this case, respondents has a choice to fill out the questionnaire whenever is convenient for him or for her. In this case, this has an advantage compared to the interviewing, because the respondents, one can start filling out the questionnaire, then could be interrupted, then can be continued, etc. at any time. So convenience is important here, and of course, it provides more anonymity because it's not a face-to-face and nobody is present during during this process. However, it also has a limitation as online interviews. So first of all, it's the questionnaire. It shouldn't be very lengthy because you cannot, have, let's say, 60, 70 or 80 questions in the online questionnaire. Nobody will respond to these questions. At some point, maybe after 15 or 20 questions, people will get bored, tired, and they will stop responding, or they will just try to please researchers and put some response without thinking on the question. So this is very important, that the questionnaire has to be designed in a way allowing to collect good quality, high quality data. So all these things have to be taken into account. Also, the language is very important. How we define, how we formulate the questions, that the scale, the measurement scales have to be very carefully designed so that there won't be any need for interpretation, because different people interpret different things differently. So not different things. Same measurement scale could be interpreted differently. So we have to avoid also having this kind of issue with the questionnaire. A big issue or major issue related to this self-administered questionnaire is a low response rate and also quality of responses. Unfortunately, we cannot ensure that 100%, the questionnaires will be filled out and sent back. The average rate of the response rate varies from 30, 40 to 60%, and there are different kind of techniques how to increase the response rate of the questionnaire survey. Another issue is the quality of response, because again, we don't know if the person understands the questions well and thinks before responding to the questions. So we don't have an interviewer, we don't have a researcher in place to instruct how to fill out the questionnaire, or to explain in case if there is some questions, some issues with the wording, to explain the questions. verbal behavior also cannot be studied through these self-administered questionnaires. Of course, verbal behavior is also difficult to study through online interviews, but still, maybe through audio sensors would be possible to say something about interviewers, emotional condition or emotional situation. However, self-administered questionnaire doesn't allow to collect any data or having any idea about verbal behavior of the respondents. So again, compared to interview, this data collection method is not very flexible because you don't have a chance for probing or for clarification. You have this, opportunities, or you have these possibilities during the interview, but not during the self-administered questionnaire. You cannot control the sequence of the way that the questionnaire is being, filled up. You cannot control the sequence because you don't know how the respondent starts responding to the questionnaire. If he or she completed it once, or just stop for a while, then continue. We don't have a control over the environment. We don't know who is present during this, process, and we don't know also the identity of the respondent. We don't know if this questionnaire is filled out by the respondents, by the intended respondents, or someone else. Maybe the respondents has provided the QR code someone else to his or her friends, husband's wife, and asked them to participate in the survey. And there's also another limitation related to display effect, which is equivalent to interviewers' effect in a face-to-face interaction. The way that you display the questionnaire, the way that you present it, of course, has a huge impact on how the questionnaire will be filled up. Even including the internet speed. If you're trying to complete the questionnaire, if you have a good speed and if you don't have an issue with your connection, it's much easier. You can focus and concentrate on the questionnaire. But if you have a bad connection and you have a interruption or disconnection, then it's very hard and you cannot focus on the questionnaire. So these are the issues which, of course, affects the quality of the questionnaire survey. Next slide, please. So before we move to this slide, I want to say that, you know about it probably. I'm sure you know that there are different kind of software tools for online surveys, and some of them are free of charge. You can use without any issue. For some of them, you need to have a subscription. We use a lot the SurveyMonkey, which is free of charge and easy to operate. And depending on the subject, or depending on the length of your questionnaire, you may decide to use different kind of software tools for your online survey. So in this slide, we have I described the advantages and disadvantages of remote data collection or online methods. So I start from advantages. In fact, these online or remote approaches potentially could offer certain advantages, or are offering certain advantages over the conventional methods. They are, in most cases, they are cost and time effective if planned properly. They can be less constrained by geographic location and size of beneficiary population. They can also serve as a consultation and participation tools and a feedback, platform to improve project performance. In addition, they also provide a higher sense of anonymity for the participants, because, as I said, we don't have an interviewer present during this, for example, questionnaire survey, but also government officials, which is a great maybe advantage for online surveys. However, a number of critical issues will need to be addressed in online. Yeah, one thing that I also want to mention this is that they are environmentally friendly, because we're not traveling and we're not using paper and printing materials. So this is, I think, huge advantage compared to conventional research methods, where we have to travel, we have to print all the questionnaires, use a lot of papers, etc. Next slide, please. However, there are some critical issues that have to be addressed in order to have a good quality data. And these are, if I group, these issues, these challenges, methodological challenges, these are data quality related issues, research representativeness or generalization of the findings, inclusiveness of the survey, and also ethical aspect of the survey. So let's start from the representativeness, although I have a slide on the sampling, but okay, let's discuss it here. It's very difficult to have representative sample or representative survey in online surveys. It doesn't matter, is it interviewing or self-administered. For interviewing, maybe it's possible, and I'll discuss why. But in general, it's very difficult to design representative sample through probability sampling method, because unfortunately we don't have information about. There's no register of internet users, and we don't have a contact information of all beneficiaries or all target groups that we want to reach out. So of course this affects, or this impact the issue of generalization of findings, how much or how far we can go with this generalization. It's also easier during online survey to manipulate the data collection process. As I mentioned, for example, we cannot identify or verify the identity of the respondents, and we don't know who is, filling out the questionnaire. We cannot have a control over that one. It's also very difficult to reach out vulnerable people, meaning that some, social groups may be excluded from our survey. And for us, for development specialists, vulnerability analysis and vulnerable beneficiaries have always been the focus of our social analysis. Therefore, there should be a careful assessment as to whether the applied new data collection approach will exclude any participants, and we have to think carefully how to mitigate all these access issues. We also have to be aware that it's more likely that most vulnerable people will not have access to the internet and mobile resources. That's very important. Another challenge in online survey is that we are not able to collect information about the social context, which is the important source of information, and in any social research, particularly in qualitative research. Unfortunately, this remote and online research, will never replace being there in person, since that allows the researchers to get information on the social situation and livelihood systems around the project beneficiaries. This is something that we cannot do through application of online researches. Also, it's quite difficult to discuss sensitive issues, online. It's better to have this kind of discussions face to face. Respondents' willingness to participate is also very important, especially during these pandemic times, because most of the people are quite stressed out, and it's very difficult to ask someone to participate in the survey. It's time consuming, and it's more complex than before COVID. Therefore, we have to apply, different kind of contacting modes in order to get approval from or in order to get respondents' consent to participate in the survey. This is very important. Another important things, or the challenge for the online data collection, is the digital literacy. Not only digital divide, but literacy, because unfortunately, not everyone has a good digital literacy and can access to all these applications and participate in the survey. So this is also limit the quality or impact the quality of information collected through online methods. Next slide, please. So on this slide, I've decided, to focus on digital accessibility because this is very important. This is why we have some, groups being excluded from our survey. This is why we cannot say that, our survey is representative, and we cannot generalize the findings because we don't have a representation of all social groups in our surveys. And the reason is that we have a digital divide by countries and also within the countries. And unfortunately, most of the offline population, not unfortunately, that's the reality, that most of the offline population lives in least developed countries. And we know already that there's quite big gender gap, or growing. We have this gender gap growing fast in developing countries. For example, we have a proportion of women using the internet globally is 48%. It's about 48% compared to 58% of men. And I already discussed the digital literacy of respondents. And for some social, groups or representatives of social groups, this is really challenging. If we compare internet with mobile phone coverage, of course, mobile phone coverage and penetration rate is much higher. That's why, conducting interviews is more maybe reasonable in a sense that we could have a quite good sample frame, which also could be a representative. So we'll talk a lot about it a bit later. Next slide, please. Yeah, and before moving to this slide, I mentioned already that, these web-based surveys, of course, are also confronted with limited access to certain demographic groups. And even, if these groups have a physical access to devices, to the internet, to a mobile phone, etc., not everyone has digital literacy. And for example, for maybe women or for elderly people, it will be very difficult, for example, to to go online, to scan their QR code and open the questionnaire and fill out the questionnaire. And that's why they need some, facilitation in this process. And I'll discuss when I present this pilot project that we're conducting now in China. I'll discuss this issue, and because there we're facing with this issue, and we're trying to find some solution to include these, socio-demographic groups in our survey in order to get also their opinions, their views on the project, which is very, very important from the project inclusiveness, from the project inclusive design perspective. So that's really important. So I already discussed the sampling issue a little bit. Just want to mention that we use both types of sampling, probability and non-probability or convenience sampling methods, but often or more frequently we rely on non-probability sampling method, which is characterized by a non-systematic approach to recruiting respondents, often allowing a potential respondent to self-select into the sample. And there are different, types, different methods for designing non-probability sampling. Unfortunately, as I said, it's difficult to design probability sampling very often or in all kind of online surveys because of absence of this register or complete information about the target population in order to be able to design this representative sample frame. So this is really an issue, but in some cases, we still are able to do this. For example, this list-based sampling method, we still, can apply this method, especially when we are working or when we are conducting survey in the social sector. Recently, we had 2 projects in early childhood education, and we conducted all our social analysis online, and we reached out people through kindergartens because they had the contact numbers of all parents, which allowed us to have a representative sample and conduct interviews through internet, through self-administered questionnaire. We send the QR codes and ask parents and teachers to participate in the survey. So this is maybe the best scenario when we have a complete information about our target or beneficiary population, and we can design a representative sample. Next slide, please. So data quality, I think, as I mentioned, this is one of the key challenges that we're facing in online surveys, and you may know that the conventional criteria or the traditional criteria of data quality measurement are validity, reliability, objectivity. And when we're talking about validity, we have internal validity and external validity. One is related with the truth of the findings, and the other one about the context, about transferability. If we're talking about external validity, can we apply the findings to other context or with other groups of people? So this question helps us to define the external validity. So when we're speaking about data quality in online surveys, we have to say that if we assess the data quality from the conventional research perspectives, probably these online surveys will not be in a good position because, as I said, there are different challenges related to sampling frame, related to coverage, related to low response rate, etc. That's why the measurement criteria, the data quality measurement or assessment criteria should be different. Anyway, if we try to discuss it within this traditional, criteria like validity, etc., mostly we have to say that here we're dealing mostly with external validity and in some cases with internal validity issue. And the reasons are the following. As I mentioned before, large-scale sections of population do not have access to the internet. We don't have a complete information about the target population in order to be able to design a representative sample. The response rate is not high. In fact, it's low. That's why we have to try to use different tactics or techniques to increase the response rate. The display effects also has an impact on the on the quality of data. It could be screen size, operating system, as I said. It could be even internet speed. Also, this so-called risk associated with satisficing, when respondents get tired or they're less motivated. They're trying just to please a researcher to complete the survey quickly and send back the questionnaire, but in fact the answers or the responses are not reflecting their opinions and their ideas. So these are the issues that affects the mostly the external validity of online surveys. Next slide, please. So how to improve the quality of data? Here are some suggestions or recommendations. First of all, we have to try to obtain information about target population from different sources and using different modes of contacting with people and asking to participate in the survey. We have to do some follow-up with potential participants to make sure that they will participate in the survey so that we have a sufficient number of participants in the sample. We have to also try using triangulation, applying different data collection methods to reach out, especially to reach out to some of the sociodemographic groups which could be potentially excluded from the survey. For example, if some social groups do not have access to the internet and they cannot complete the questionnaire via internet, we can reach out them via phone and conduct an interview. So this is also possible. And of course, I think the modern technologies allowing us to apply some kind of applications, online applications to check the emotional condition of the respondents and to conduct also attention check, etc. So this kind of measures are data quality measures are also possible to conduct. Next slide, please. So next, the next big issue related to methodological challenges is the ethical considerations in online survey, and this is related to these new modes of human interactions on a virtual space, virtual interactions or communications. So when we're speaking about ethical considerations, we have to speak about informed consent, rapport, psychological, physical security, confidentiality, privacy of participants, risk of third-party reuse and data sharing, and underrepresentation of certain groups of people due to accessibility issue. So Sorry, I'm seeing your question. That's why. Okay, I'll answer. I'll get back to you later on. So, let's start from the informed consent, because this is very important. It's very important to, before starting the research process, to get the consent of the respondents and make sure that they understand, they understand the reasons that they are participating in the research, they understand their rights, they also understand that they also acknowledge that they have a right to withdraw from the survey anytime that they want. And it would be good to get this informed consent not before the interview, but or not together with the questionnaire survey, but before that, before sending the questionnaire to the respondents, it would be good to have their informed consent in the separate communication. And make a follow-up during the interview or a questionnaire survey process. Building rapport is also very, very important. Without that, without building trust, it would not be possible to conduct the survey. And that's why there should be some solid procedures in place to ensure also that, data cannot be traced back to respondents or cannot be disseminated. That's why, when we say that online surveys are cost effective, we also have to take into account that in some cases it could be quite costly. For example, the cost associated with the remote survey and keeping the data safe and secure could be quite high, because we understand that anything that we send across the internet will be stored on multiple servers. And it can be traced back at any point. So, and it can be used by a third party. That's why, we have to spend sufficient resources to ensure the confidentiality and the security of our respondents. So this is, I think, very, very important. So next slide, please. So in the next two slides, I'll briefly talk about the pilot project that we're conducting right now in one of as part of our projects. This is in China, in Jilin project. We are going to use this Pin Street online platform, which is China's first public engagement platform, and it's use WeChat program. It's releases its content via this official WeChat account and sending the QR code to participants and asking to participate in the survey. So it's really a very, interactive platform focusing on urban space quality and livelihood issues. It's a good tool to strengthen participatory local governance. Because it allows to incorporate the voices, opinions of people in the design of development projects, which is very important. So it's a very participatory tool. Next slide, please. We started the pilot project in 2019, December 2019. Currently, it's a little bit slowed down because of this pandemic, but we hope that we will be able to continue the second phase in October, November this year. We were able to collect 1,234 questionnaires, complete questionnaires, and 1,371 proposals through open-ended questions in 10 days. So it's a very good, indication. And we have a good representation of women. 57% of respondents, in this sample were women. We had a quite wide coverage, so it covers all the villages and towns involved in the project. And believe me, the coverage was really a very good one. And we reach also agreement with local government that will continue piloting this in a second phase in order to identify all the methodological challenges and also to address the challenges. So it's not only a pilot project to it's not a pilot project in the sense that we want to get information or primary data through this online platform, but it's also pilot in the sense that we want to pilot the methodology, which will allow us also to address some of the challenges that I've been discussing before. I mentioned that in some cases we're having some difficulties reaching out, some socio-demographic groups, and I mentioned, for example, older people. And in this project, we'll engage young people to facilitate this pilot process and public participation, and we'll ask these, young people to help elderly people and also the farmers who are living far away and maybe will not have access to these digital tools in order to include their views and opinions in this survey. So in this sense, this is a very good pilot project, and we're looking forward to the results of the finding of this pilots. So I hope that based on this, we will publish some knowledge products, and we'll share also with your university library, so that you also can have access to this methodological paper. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, and well, COVID has created unprecedented challenges for all of us. I think that it creates also opportunities for development, including development of this digital-based data collection. Of course, this pandemic has catalyzed the usage of digital technologies together with the conventional methods. And I think that as the situation improves, we still can resume in-person research, but in my opinion, the preference will be given to mixed data collection methods and tools, because we've already accumulated quite extensive experience and knowledge in this online survey field, and it would be very, it would be pity to lose this experience. So most probably will be built on this experience and combine online and offline data collection methods in the future. So with this thought, I'd like to conclude my presentation and open the floor for the discussion and questions. Of course, I would also be interested to hear your experience and views on online data collection methods application in your academic research work, or in your paper work. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation.
Was it okay that the quality was okay? No,
yeah, it was yeah, we could hear every word. So
okay, good.
We have compiled a list of questions which will be shared right now. Okay, so
let me try to turn on the video, but sorry about this. Let me try. Okay.
All right. Okay, I'll stop my video.
Oops. Yeah.
Okay, so so there are a number of questions. Okay, so the first question would be, for online interviews using video software, would you recommend sending the questions beforehand to the interviewees, as opposed to, I guess, just on the spot asking them the questions?
It's a very good question, and it's a judgment call. So you have to decide how to behave in this case. I think there's no definite answer on this. Of course, it would be good if you send your questionnaire beforehand, so that respondents are aware of the topic, of the questions that they're going to ask. So that's the advantage, so that they can think about the questions and they can provide more meaningful answers. But I guess in some cases it would be good just to start the interview at the spot without sending the questionnaire to the respondents. So this is something that you have to decide. It depends on the topic of your research.
Okay, and then the next question would be, what do you think about using mixed methods, for example, a mixture of interview and questionnaire? Yep.
Yes, that's very important. And as I said in my presentation, it would be good to combine, different data collection modes to reach out certain sociodemographic groups and to overcome, certain problems related to, this digital device and also digital literacy. Of course, if the literacy level of the respondents is low and you are aware about it, so it's better, in addition to your self-administered questionnaire, to conduct interview. Just reach out people via phone and conduct interview by phone. So this is very important to have a maximal coverage and inclusion in your survey.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat, which I'm just going to go to first. So how should a study be, by Alfred Ong, how should a study be made remote when the original design involves participants using physical equipment? I'm not too sure what So for example, if a study...
Which one?
It's the most recent question in the chat box. It is not on the page.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you read the question again?
Okay, how should a study be made remote when the original design involves participants using physical equipment?
Yeah.
Alfred, maybe you would like to give us some details about your question?
Okay, for example, when they are using activity trackers as part of the research protocol.
Yeah, I understood. In many cases, the remote data collection includes some physical presence of the facilitator or the interviewer in the field, because as we discussed before, not everyone has access to digital devices, for example, internet, computer, etc. And that's why in some cases the data are collected through the devices provided by the research company, for example, tablets. But it doesn't mean that it's conventional or traditional face-to-face interviewing. So that's why we said that it's more remote type of survey rather than face-to-face interviewing. So that's the difference between remote in this sense and conventional data collection.
Okay, and then the next question would be, are there any strategies for participant recruitment if we don't have contact details of the population we wish to sample, or are there any alternative methods?
Yeah, there are different strategies, and if you go back to this non-probability convenience sampling slide, you will see that the people can be recruited through, for example, advertisement. People can be in the public places. People could be recruited through social media, through contacting them via email. Yes, there are different strategies, and you can choose, which one is best fit for your survey.
Okay, and then after that, since data collection is done remotely, how can we motivate participation if there is no budget for like an online gift or...
Yeah, very good question. Well, I think I had a slide on that, how to improve data quality and the coverage, sample coverage, and I think I already mentioned a few options of increasing participation rate of respondents. One of the options would be contacting them personally via email, then sending a follow-up reminders for the participation, clearly defining their rights and also the withdrawal options that they if they decide they can do it anytime. So as I mentioned, the preparation work, the preparatory stage in online surveys are very, very important. I mean, in any survey, the quality of survey data or the quality of collected data, of course, depends on this preparation. But in online survey, I think we need to do more preparation than in conventional, because in conventional survey, you can do some corrections, some adjustment, even during the field work. Even, you can correct your sampling. You can adjust your sampling. But in the online survey, once you send out the questionnaire, it will be very difficult. Still, you can do something, but it would be good to do all these things prior, starting your survey.
Okay, and then finally, the last question is, can you share a little bit more about how the length of the survey impacts response rates and drop-off rates? For example, like, the percentage that will do it, will not do it, and then will do halfway and then stop.
Yeah. So this is a very good question. And, we have this issue not only in online surveys, but also in face-to-face interview process. And I recall one project that we were conducting, I think it was also, again, in China. And the consultant prepared a questionnaire which contained about over 200, I don't remember the exact, 230 or 240 something questions. When I looked at that questionnaire, I said that forget about this survey, because you will not get any meaningful, data, any meaningful information, because there are some good researches on this already, that after a certain time, even during face-to-face interviews, people lose their attention, so they cannot focus, they cannot concentrate on the questions, and of course they will continue to respond to the questions, but the quality of their responses would not be that as good as in case if you have a good questionnaire. So therefore, in online survey, knowing all these problems that exist also in the conventional, we have to be very careful. And I think in average, 15 to 20 minutes of interviewing would be a good timing for getting a good quality data. If we conduct, let's say, interview which will last 30 minutes or 50 or 1 hour, I think it will be very difficult from different reasons. Not only, also we have to take also into account that it's quite time consuming, and we cannot ask a person, to spend 1 hour over the phone just answering to our questions. So it's also an ethical issue, I think.
Okay, thank you. There's one more question in the chat. It is about getting consent. So how do we get written consent? Because traditionally, we use participant information sheet with a consent form with a physical signature. This is by Ruth.
Yeah. The reason that I said that it would be good to get this informed consent prior starting the interview or the questionnaire survey process is that you need to get their written consent. Yeah, it could be signature, it could be just reply to your email that we agree, we acknowledge receiving the form, we agree, blah, blah. So it's, when you conduct face-to-face, it's much easier. You just give a paper, a person read and then sign up that, he or she read and understand and agree. That's why in an online survey, maybe, they will not be able to sign off, but at least they can reply, they can provide the feedback that, they read the informed consent, they read the form, they understand what's written there, they understand their rights, etc., and they agree to participate in the survey. So this is something that we need to get before we start any research or interview process with that person.
Okay, a further example, how do we get consent if it is an interview over the phone, for example?
Before starting your interview, you have to contact with the person, discuss with this person the objective of this interviewing, the key maybe question, just trying to give some information in order to better understand how the data will be used, who will also maybe not maybe also you have to explain how the data will be used. You have to explain that before disclosing this the data or the reports, you will send the draft report to the respondents for their review and their feedback. So you have to explain these kind of things to the respondents before you start the actual interview process. Once they agree on all these things, then you can move to the next step and conduct your interview. But you have to separate your interview process from the process of getting informed consent. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So further to that question, again by Ruth, would just a reply just okay be enough for consent? So after explaining them to them, and then if they just say okay, is that considered consent?
Okay it's not enough, because okay may also mean that a person didn't understand very well the points that you explained. So I would prefer to have okay for each of the points that I present as part of this informed consent, or some other words, not okay, but not general okay. I think saying okay doesn't mean that the person understood and agreed on all the points that were presented as part of this consent.
Okay. And then finally, for phone obtaining consent over phone, how can we record the informed consent if it is over phone?
Well, you can use different application, but before recording, I think you may know that you have to ask for permission.
Okay.
The problem I think it's not a problem to record. The problem is to ask a permission and to get a agreement for recording that's also a good way of documenting, let's say, the informed consent, if you want to go in that way. But first of all, you have to get agreement from the researchers from the respondents. Sorry.
Okay, is there anyone else who has questions for Dr. Tadevosian? You can either unmute yourself or you can type it into the chat. Okay, maybe I'll just give about a minute. And in the meantime, I will just share the feedback form. So thank you for being here, also for your time. And then maybe you can just, if you would like, and we will review the feedback and take it into account when planning and things like that. The link is in the chat. So
There's also one more question in the chat. Yeah, new one.
Okay, yeah. So you can fill that in the meantime. In the meantime, there is one more question by Brian Chang. So for online videos, interviews using video software that is supposed to be anonymous and confidential, so I suppose maybe Zoom, would it be okay to record the interview, or would you recommend transcribing it? And Brian Chang says also, if you get permission to record, would that change the response? So would there be any effect on the interview if you ask to record it?
Very good question. Again, this refers not only to online but also offline surveys. When you do a face-to-face interview, qualitative interview, and you ask permission to record the interview, of course, it affects the behavior of the respondents. That's why we're always recommending to ask a permission, and if the respondents feel confident that they're fine with the recording, then it's you can start the recording. But if they hesitate, or they show some signs, even they've said okay, but from the non-verbal behavior, you see that they feel uncomfortable, so it's better not to record. the interview. So in case of the online interview, of course, if you have a option, if you have both option, recording and transcribing, it's better to do both. And even if you do recording, you still have to do the transcribing, because when you do transcribing, you also capture some non-verbal or verbal behavior elements which may not be very visible in the recording. So that's why, parallel to recording, it would be good also to write down all these things that you notice during the interview. And the question about recording, again, if you ask a permission and you see that people feel comfortable and it's online, then yes, go for recording, because it helps us to capture all information and not to lose anything, including the wordings, the words, which sometimes are very, very important, the way that respondents express themselves.
Okay, does anyone thank you for all your questions, and thank you, Ms. Tadarivojan, for addressing all of them. If there are no further questions, I think we can close this room now. Okay, thank you everyone for being here. If you can leave some feedback by scanning the QR code on the screen, or going to the link in the chat. Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. We are very glad you could join us, and of course, big thank you to Ms. Tadarivojan for sharing your experience with us. I think everyone here can say that they have taken away at least something new and have acquired some new knowledge based on the experience and all the knowledge that you have shared. Okay,
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I hope that it was useful, and I hope that some of this, information will be applied in academic, work, research papers. Thank you.
Okay. So now I think we will just get everyone to remove